Hello everyone and welcome back to Code with Tinodra. So on today's video, in the first day of 2025, we're going to do a logging page. So without a further ado, I would like you to have your editor open. Let's create our index.html file, which I have already created. And I want you to go to CodeWithTinodra in my GitHub. And you will find these images or icons, we can say there. So let's get started. So we did exclamation mark and enter, and let's say 25 logging page. Now let's go ahead and create our CSS file. So let's name it style.css and then import it into our HTML. So let's have a link tag and we'll say style.css. I also want you to have the live server extension. So if you're using Visual Studio Code, go ahead to your extensions, search for live server, and after downloading that, you will see this button appear here. So this will help us to run the server to see how our website looks. And why does this help? Because we don't need to refresh every time we do a change, and the website will be updated automatically. So now let's see if this works. Let's say hello world here. Let's hit live. And as we can see, it is working. For this, I would like to have a header. And in that header, we're going to have two divs. One div, it will have the icon and a text to it. So let's say image here and an h1. For h1, let's say login. Okay. And for the other one, other div, we're going to have a button to sign up. So let's do button and as text that have sign up. Okay, let's give this button a class of sign up button. And for this div, we're going to say, actually, we don't need to give them any class name because we already have it as header. Let's save the file, go to our page, and here we will see that these two have appeared. Now for main section, let's have a tag of main, and inside it we're going to have a div of name of class login container, and then inside that div let's have an h1, also an h3. After that we want two input fields, so one will be input text and one will be input password. Then we're going to have another div with an input of checkbox and also a label for that. We're going to give this input a name of remember me, and as a label we're going to say remember me. Okay, after that let's have another text here. So this will be a link tag in case we forget the password. So let's do forget password and okie dokie. Going further, we're going to have another button and let's give it a class of proceed button. After that we can have some text saying let's have it as a span. Now let's say or use. And for this, we're going to have 3 A tags, and each of them will have an image inside them. So, okay, here they are separated. And for the image, we can go to our assets. The first one will be Google. So let's say assets and google.png. For the other one, we're going to do Apple PNG. And for the third, let's say Facebook. Okay, let's refresh the page and see how it looks. Okay, this is the expected output we want. Now let's head back to our code. And for the final part, after the main, we're going to have a footer section. So for that one, let's say copy, have a copyright logo. Let's say 2020 to 2025. All rights reserved. Login. We're going to have a simple login for the company name. And now our CSS part is, our HTML part is done. Let's move ahead to styling. So for this, first of all, what we want to do is set the margin for all the elements that have default margin to 0, and also the padding. And for the list tags, let's do none, and text decoration also none. So now let's go ahead and style our header. So for the header, we're going to say flex, display of flex, a width of 100%, and if we save, go ahead here, this is okay. Now what we want to do is we want to have the login here and the sign up there. So because the width is set at 100, we can say justify content space between. What that will do, it will move our button to the corner. Okay, now let's move on. Let's say header div. So we are targeting all the divs that are inside the header, and for those we can say margin of 1 rem top and bottom and 5 rems to left and right. Okay. Now let's go ahead and style our button. For that, let's see, yes, we have it as a button. So let's say a header button, and we're going to say a width, we're going to give it a width of 10 rems and a height of 3 rems. Save, go back. Okay, this is the expected output. Let's give it a background of transparent. Okay. Let's say border radius of 0. Okay. And now let's say a color of black and a border, an outline of none, and a border of 2 pixels solid black. And we want the font weight to be a bit bolder, so let's say 700. Now we want this button also to be clickable on hover, which it is kind of strange that it is not already. So let's say cursor pointer. Okie dokie. Also, let's have a bit more margin to the top. So let's go ahead and say 1.5 rems. Also here at all, we forget to say box sizing border box. After setting the box sizing to border box, we don't need to give the margin to these, but instead we can say padding to the header tag itself and add the space there. So we should see the same output. Yep, this is okay. Now we want to have the header tag positioned as absolute. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's position this as absolute. And for the body, you're going to say position relative. Okay, looking okay. And now for the main, actually let's give the, what we want to do is for this part, like the half of the page, to have some kind of linear gradient as its background. So to have the background as a linear gradient, instead of writing it ourselves, which we can also do, I have an image here ready. So let me grab that image. So let me grab that image and move it to our assets page. This will be the image. And now for body, let's give it a background of URL, and we're going to say assets and rectangle.png. This is okay. Now you're going to say background repeat, no repeat, background size, let's say cover, and yes, this is our expected output. So let's move ahead and style our main, which will be here. So let's go ahead, this main, let's select it, main, and for this we're going to give it a background color of white, a width of 50% we can say, and a height of 60%. Also, we are going to have main. Actually, we want it to be at 100% and the width at 100%. We can say display of flex. We can justify the content to the center and also align the content, align items to the center. And save that. Back to our page. Actually, inside of percent, we can say view width and view height. So back to our page. Okie dokie. We have our text, our main centered. Now for the H1, let's say log in to company. And for the H3, let's say quick and simple way to automate something. Now for the text, we can have a placeholder of John Doe at example.com, and for the password we can have a placeholder of 8 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4. Copy. So 8. Back to our page and OK. Now let's go ahead and style our login container. The login container, we're going to have it as flex, displayed as flex. We can have the height as 600 pixels and the width as 550 pixels. So save, go back. Okay, now instead of flex direction row, let's have it as column. So flex direction of column, not color, but column, which this is the expected output. Now, where did the background go? Why is it not showing? Okay, now I see the background image is not where we want it, so we want it to be kind of at the half here, like this. So to do that, let's go here and say background size cover and 500 pixels. So let's say auto. Actually cover and auto, but more pixels, 700. Okay, this looks a bit better. Let's do 600 maybe. Yeah, this would be more appropriate. Important. For the login container, we're going to have a background color of white. Okay. Now let's center this text and give it some margin at the top. So for that, we'll say login container. Let's do login container and h1. Okay, we can say text align center and give it a margin top of 1 rem. This looks okay, but actually a bit more, so 1.5. Okay. Now for this text, I'm thinking of actually making it a p tag instead of an h3. That looks better. Let's go back, copy that line, and have a p instead of the h1 there. And for this, I want it to have a color of gray and also a tiny bit of margin top. Also, not to forget, we want it to be centered. Next align center. This looks okay. Now, going back on a second thought, what we can do is have all this, including the button, in another div. So let's go ahead and do that. Actually, we can have those also in a separate div. And let's say other login options. Okay, for this, let's say as login main. Now, let's say login main. And we're going to have some margin at the bottom and the top also. So let's say 1.5 rems, both top and bottom, and left and right, let's have it as 0. Also, we want the display to be of flex and the flex direction to be of column. To justify the contents to center and also align the items to center. Let's go ahead, OK. And for this input, let's have a label. Let's give the input a name of username. The label we're going to say for username. Let's say, I actually want this to be an email address. So email and email and email address. Let's have it uppercase, email address. Okay. But we want this to be before the input. And we're going to do the same. So let's copy this line. For the password, let's have this to say password. The input name will be password, and the for will be password also. Actually, on second thought, we can have them both on a separate div. And this one too. And for the first div, I can give it a class of email. So let's say login email. For the second one, a class of login password. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and style them. Also for this one, or remember me, we can have that on a separate div. Now to style our inputs, so our login email and login password, actually we can give them a name of email input and password input. So back to our CSS file, let's say email input. And we're going to give it a height of 5 rems and a width of 100%. Also, a border of 1 pixel solid, and let's say black. Actually, as for the width, let's keep it at 70% maybe. Looks a bit of more acceptable. So height, let's do 3. And yeah, this looks much better. Now let's display the elements as flex, and the flex direction would be column. Okay. Now for the input, the actual input tag, let's have a border of none, an outline of none, and a background color of transparent. This looks better. Now let's give it a width of 100%. We're going to give it some margin at the left. So margin left, let's say 2 rems. Actually, that's a bit way too much. So let's say 1 rem, and that looks okay. Also now, let's go ahead and style our email address. Our email address text here, I mean. So to do that, let's go ahead. That is okay. So email input, and that is a label. We want actually a smaller font size, so let's say 14 pixels. That's all right. Let's say 13. And I want to have it, I want the font weight of it to be bold. So font weight, let's say bold. Looks okay. I'm going to give this label the same margin of 1 rem, and also some margin to the bottom of 0.5 rems. Now, on second thought, I think we should have this be a bit bigger. So let's say height of 3.5 rems. Tiny bit. Let's keep it even and say 4. Okay. Now for the label, let's give it also some margin top of 1 rem. A bit less, 0.7. And that looks somewhat okay. But actually, I don't want the color to be like this, but some kind of gray-ish. So let's say color gray. A bit darker maybe. And I think it looks okay. We are going to have the same styling applied to our password input too. So here we can do dot password input. Here we can have the same. So password input label. And for this one too. Input. So both would have the same styling. Now, let's modify. I want to give these inputs some space between them, because as we can see, they are stuck together. So to do that, back to our style, margin of top and bottom of 0.5 rems, and left and right of 0. Okay, that looks much better now. Now let's go ahead and style our remember me section. So to do that, we are going to give this div a class of remember me container. Okay. Let's paste that here. Now let's have it displayed as flex and justify content of space between. That looks alright, so let's give it a width of 100%. Okay, but instead of having padding or margin for every single element, because as we can see here, this is sticking to the corner, which we don't want. What we can do is give the logging container. Can we actually do that? Yeah, I think we can. So we can give the logging container a padding of 5 rems on each side. So that would actually on top bottom is say 0. But in that case, we would need to give this email and password inputs a width of 100%. And yeah, this is a lot easier. Instead of giving each element, each section we want to style a padding. Now for the remember me, I want it to be like more down. We forgot to add the text there. Okay. Now for the remember me container, let's have some margin to the top of 1.5 rems. That is okay. Now let's style our proceed button. So the class for that button is proceed button. So let's do proceed button. Let's give it a width of 100%, a background color of black, so 3 zeros, a color of white. Let's see. Also, we don't want it to have any border, so border 0. Also, we don't want it to have any border radius. We have none here now. Let's say 0. I want it to be a bit larger in height. This seems okay. And also the text to be a bit bigger. So let's say font size of 20 pixels. That's a bit too much. Let's do 18. And that is okay. So now also we want to have some margin to the top. Let's say 1 rem. This looks okay. And we want it to be clickable. Now for this one, for the span, let's give it a class of other option text, options text. And let's select it and let's do text align to the center. And I want it to have a color of gray. That is okay. Now for these buttons. Other login options. Let's select them. Let's give it a width of 100%. Okay, let's justify the content. Let's have it displayed as flags first. Let's justify the content to center. All right, and let's have some gap. Let's say 2 rems on top and bottom 0, left and right 2 rems of gap. So now for the each individual button, I don't want any border and also the background color to be of transparent. Okay, now also some margin to the top. That margin should be applied to the container. Okay, I think this looks somewhat okay now. We want to change this forget password link to a black, let's say grayish color, and remove that default styling of blue that it has. a tag color of gray. Yep, that looks better now. And now for the last part, which is the footer, let's go ahead and style it. So for the footer, let's say dot footer and have it positioned as absolute. And we're going to say bottom of 5 rem. We are going to give footer a color of gray. Let's see how this looks. And let's say text align to center. None of that is working. Why is that? Okay, I have a dot there, which should not be the case because footer is a tag. So let's give it a width of 100%. And there we have it, displayed in the center. So this is it for this video, guys. It was a really simple login page. We have not made it mobile responsive for the sake of the video being a little shorter. So thank you very much for watching. Leave a comment below if you have any questions. Like and subscribe for more content like this. And I will see you in the next one.